Hello, and welcome to Cow Talks. This is Marcelo Wallau, Forage Extension Specialist and Associate Program Leader at the University of Florida. Today we have a special episode recorded live at the 4th Small Ruminant Short Course, hosted by the University of Florida Small Ruminant Extension team on October 10th, 2025. In this episode, I invited Jim Malooley and Bill Johnson from Silicon Ranch for a roundtable at the short course, where we discuss the main aspects of integrating sheep into solar system. It is a very interesting and innovative discussion, and I hope you enjoy this conversation. So Florida is one of the hot spots for solar energy. I think we are third going to second in the country in terms of production. And I have some stats here. We produce sufficient energy for about 2.4 million homes. It generates about 14,000 jobs statewide. I have an stats here that is a little bit dated, 2023, that says we have about 50,000 acres in solar farms in the state. I think it's more than that nowadays. I was not able to find in the Solar Energies Industry Association any updated number, but 2023 was 50,000. In the next 5 years, they are planning an expansion of 64%. So it's a lot of solar going. So we need energy, of course, but we're all farmers here, right? And it hurts to see that. So the land use change causes a lot of controversy. And there's a lot of disputes about the land use change. Is this good? What are we doing for the society? Is producing energy just a good justification from removing this land from agriculture? What about the ecosystem services they provide? What if we can do both? Have you ever heard about agrivoltaics? Agrivoltaics. So agricultural voltaics, energy from solar farms, a concept that actually brings the two industries together. One of my passions is to think big about systems. So one of the areas of research in my group is about integrating systems. So we can integrate different systems with the idea that we can improve land use efficiency, and the outcome of those two systems together is better than if we had just the sum of one or the other. Is it possible? Can we do that? That we can generate both energy and also food and also ecosystem services. So the agrivoltaics is a concept that brings those two together. And I think there is a lot of potential to integrate. One of the things that folks do a lot in agrivoltaics is integrating grazing animals as a tool for vegetation management. Mostly sheep. Nothing against the goat people here, but goats tend to be a little unruly. They would jump on the panels, they would eat the cables. Yeah. Cows will knock them down, and the sheep.
I'll challenge that in a moment.
Awesome. I love challenges. And some people would say that the sheep are probably not bright enough to do anything, but I keep the sheep there. So that's why I invite those two guys here. Jim Malooley is director for the Agrivoltaic Operation at Silicon Ranch, which is the first company-owned flock of sheep in the solar industry. And they are spread across 3 ranches in South Georgia. So Jim himself is a first-generation rancher. And he always had this vision of developing animal and management systems in markets to scale sheep production in the Southeast, which is basically what we are also trying to do here, help you scale the sheep production to make that industry more significant. The Silicon Ranch manages the largest catading flock in the country, and they are trying to create the Southeastern adapted sheep here. And he brought together Bill Johnson, and from what I understand, Bill is the man that makes things happen in the field, right? Bill comes from Moultrie, Georgia, 7th generation farmer here, so grew up in agriculture, history in agriculture. I love that too. Has a degree from Abram Baldwin Agricultural College in Tifton. And since he joined the Silicon Ranch, he lives in Elko, Georgia, with the solar ranch with one of the flocks, and now they are managing 2,000 head of catading ewes. He oversees the daily operations of the ranch, of the flock, and also helps on health management, grazing management, and more. Welcome.
Thank you. We don't come with the credentials the rest of the speakers today had. So appreciate all the other information that was shared. Thank you for having us.
So I gave a little brief background of what agrivoltaics or the solar industry, what agrivoltaics is. But conceptually, what is agrivoltaics for you? What you guys doing and what is Silicon Ranch?
All right, so agrivoltaics combines two words. We don't love the word agriculture and photovoltaics, which is a solar module. Agrivoltaics, it's the co-location of commercial scale agricultural production and utility scale clean energy electricity production. It could be crops, produce, berries, hay, sheep, cattle, and if you've got a place that supports cattle, I think you can run goats too. We'll find out. Our goal is to stack as many agricultural enterprises on the same acre as reasonable. We do this at home on the ranch. If we run a couple classes of livestock and maybe we rotate some row crops through there, or we seek to have diversified income streams, we seek to have diversified markets. As producers, we face a lot of challenges. Those are also present when you're in a solar plant, but the opportunity that it creates is an income stream from the vegetation management services. So it further diversifies your agricultural enterprise, and we have more tools in the toolbox to draw from and be creative and maybe try something new that could end up failing or, ultimately not being as successful as we intended. But we got to figure out what Marcelo brought up. The land use conversation is loud now. And I'm a farmer. I'm first generation. I'm an engineer by education, but I grew up surrounded by farms. Dad was a dentist, mom was a teacher. I wanted to go into agriculture, but I didn't have land. So I went to the state school in Indiana, Purdue, and went into engineering because that's what you do there. And about 15 years later, my wife, who is in hospitality, we quit our professional jobs, moved to Tennessee, bought a farm in a town of less than 20,000 people. I'd never lived anywhere with less than 1 million. There was a little culture shock, but that was 13 years ago, and we raised our daughter there, and we'll grow old there, and came to appreciate that rural values reflected the values that I was brought up with. And I saw the exodus of the next generation of farmers as an existential problem for the town that I live in. And I know that it's repeated in many communities across the country. And so before I met Silicon Ranch, I was working with cattle producers to integrate sheep onto their properties. Silicon Ranch reached out, and I was a skeptical landowner. No, I won't sell you sheep. No, I won't lease my land. No, I won't come work for you. It was a short conversation. But I went home, did my homework, learned about the company, learned about their values, and realized that this was a unique solar developer, owner, operator. We buy the land that our power plants is located on. That means we own and operate the project for the life of it, which is uncommon. These projects are commonly packaged and sold kind of like portfolios of mortgages. We enter a community, and we're going to be your neighbor for 30 to 40 years, and we approach it with that. And we're going to have farms on each side of us, and the conversation that I have with our neighbors is, the landowner was selling, it's a subdivision or a power plant. In most cases, those are the two industries that have the resources to come in and scoop up those large tracts of land. And overwhelmingly, I hear an appreciation for the fact that the solar plant comes out at the end. That's all financed into it. Like even anything buried, it comes out of the ground. That land has had the benefit of responsible animal impact. We're improving the soil, the water cycles, the ecosystem, the habitat and biodiversity. It's a pretty remarkable opportunity to steward land correctly better than I can do on the home farm. And I'm proud of what I do on the home farm, so that says a lot. And I'm going to hand it over to Bill because everybody in our department was a skeptical farmer when we met Silicon Ranch.
Thank you for all lending me and Jim y'all's ear for a little while here to let you just tell us a little bit about what we do and some of the opportunities that Agrivoltaics could afford the industry. Like Jim mentioned, I come from an 8 or 9 generation family-owned farm in South Georgia. I was very skeptical of solar. I was walking around a career fair at ABAC just before I graduated with 25 resumes, handed them out, every single one of them. And the last one I had, I gave to this company called Silicon Ranch, and I just saw sheep on their sign there, and went over and started talking to them. I was always much more interested in the livestock sort of side of agriculture, much more so than row crop. But there just wasn't a spot for me to go back to on the home farm and make a living. Most other cattle jobs are not going to, or livestock jobs for that matter, are not going to be nearly as lucrative as the opportunities that I've been afforded at Silicon Ranch.
I want to be clear, I'm not trying to sell you on Silicon Ranch. I want to point out that there's significant differences in how developers approach land management, and those are important conversations to have before a project goes in.
And I think the topic of bringing the younger generation back to farming, something we have discussed so many times, and I think it resonates very well with this crowd here. So, Jim, when I first saw you several years back giving a talk, and you mentioned that basically you have lawnmowers there, you're employing those animals, those lawnmowers, those vegetation control, because vegetation control is one of the highest costs of maintenance of those solar farms. Over the phone when we spoke, when I invited you, you said that you had changed your mind about that. So tell us the role of the sheep in terms of controlling vegetation management and now as a actual production of animal resources.
Yes, so vegetation management is hands down the most impactful cost that we have on an annual basis throughout the life of the power plant. The grass can create a fire risk. It can create an arc hazard for the electrical technicians out there. It can create a shading concern and then not meet the obligations to provide electrons to the grid. So, the way that these are constructed, there's different ways that they're constructed. The main difference is whether the cabling is suspended or buried. It's cheaper to suspend the cable, but it makes the maintenance for the life of the project significantly more expensive because you can't pull a tractor with a 12-foot bat wing down the row because you can't drive from one end to the other. So contract mowers come in and they'll regularly deploy 24 zero turns and stay for 3 weeks. You can imagine the labor and equipment costs on that. The way that I met Silicon Ranch, I read an article in the paper about a power plant going in about 40 minutes from me, and I wanted a vegetation management contract. I cold called them. But sheep are perfect for getting up under that suspended cable. There's no weed whacking. Their grazing preferences, I'm not partial to one class of livestock. I like all classes of livestock as tools for land management. We ran cattle, goat, and sheep at home, and they all have different grazing behavior, but what tends to emerge post-construction in a power plant is not going to be palatable to a cow. There's going to be a lot of broadleafs out there, and they're planting grass, and the goats are not going to do a great job on that, in addition to climbing and chewing on wires. And so sheep with their selective grazer, whereas a goat's a browser and a cow is strictly grazing, the sheep kind of take it all. And if we manage them effectively, rotational grazing, whatever term you use for it, they're very effective. And our approach is, we're planting forage varieties a year or two before construction, building up our seed bank. Then construction occurs. They inevitably get rain during that process, and there's impact to the vegetation, certainly, and to the soil as it gets compaction and travel rows and stuff. But by and large, we're getting good pasture to come up under these panels. The soil stabilization is very important from a construction standpoint. Civil issues are incredibly difficult to remediate once they become an issue. And having living roots in the ground is just the easiest solution.
It sounds like a very interesting concept, but I bet it's not all flowers. What are the challenges of doing that?
Oh, I'll take that question as someone who works in the field day to day. Jim has much more experience with everything than I do, but I do a little bit more of it these days, I think. So the ranch that I work on is in Lee County, Georgia. It's a 3,500 acre property with about 2,500 to 3,000 acres under panels. And the utility of those panels are several fold. For one, all of the acreage that's under panels gets partial shade and partial sun throughout the day. So it allows those forages to grow a little bit better than they would just out in the open sun. All of those panels, whenever the weather turns bad, they go parallel to the ground, and that's just a ton of shelter from either rain or the hot sun for all of the sheep to go under. We've got about 2,000 ewes on my farm right now, and as Jim was mentioning, we refer to them as cab lines, either being buried or suspended. It's very hard when you're feeding out hay to pull down to that cab line, which will be halfway down the row, and then have to back out with certain implements, including, hay unrollers, mowers, seeding, things like that. We look at the solar arrays more of just a pasture with a bunch of stuff in our way most of the time. I tell people that the only thing I do with the panels is try not to hit my head on them. They're just a fixture that's in the panel that I have to work around. I'm sure Jim could speak more to the fact that it's harder to give dogs commands, when you can't see them because the panels are all nearly straight up and down because it's either early in the morning or late in the evening. Those panels start out in the morning facing one direction, and as the sun, travels, they rotate to get the most surface area visible to the photovoltaic panels.
I'll just make a quick interjection here. So there is basically probably more, but two main types of solar panel arrays, some that are tracking, so they move during the day, and some that are fixed orientation. The fixed orientation are not being constructed.
Whether you have sheep, a mower, or anything else, the fixed till are a bear to maintain because it slopes to the ground. So yeah, no developers are building those, including FPL.
Very interesting. So it sounds conflicting because, first of all, the objectives for vegetation maintenance, and all of a sudden here you are saying like, hey, we need to plant more forages. Sounds like we're going to two different directions. You need to control vegetation, but at the same time you want more grass.
Yes, so you want species reflected. They're going to be easy to maintain through grazing impacts. So over the course of the first 3 to 5 years, we see a transition in the pasture composition from what volunteered to what's desirable, and that's a combination of careful grazing management and using those sheep all they can for seeding efforts, mowing efforts. They can help with a lot of the land management issues.
So, what is the production potential of those animals there?
1.6 lambs per ewe in a system like his is what we do.
That's pretty nice. And those lambs are now hitting the market and going out of the farm, so we're not increasing the herd in the farm.
We're just growing from within, but they'll run 3,000 to 4,000 ewes there year round. And lamb, he does all components of production under panels. It's not barn lambing or any of that.
Right. Our system is entirely pasture based. On Wednesday we'll be putting ewes in with rams, and they'll be bred on pasture. Those lambs will be pasture born. And of course, as all of you producers here know, that introduces other challenges One of our other sites in Perry, Georgia, if you've ever traveled up I-75 just south of the fairgrounds, there's a massive barn there, and they do a lot more of our genetic work on that ranch, and they breed in the barn and lamb in the barn, but they can track, sires and dams on every one of their animals, where mine, I can't.
I have a lot more questions, but I want to open for the audience here to ask.
That one. So he's asking if the total stocking rate of the property is affected by the presence of the power plant. Answer is, it depends. It doesn't depend on the power plant being there. It depends on the past land use. It depends on how careful that contractor was, how effective they were at stabilizing the soil. But just like a farm on each side of the road might have very different production capacity based on their soils and their management system, the same is true in our context. So we just look at each ranch as it's acquired years before it's built, and we look at what the neighbors are producing. And if they're growing blueberries, it's probably a good site for blueberries. You can learn a lot just from looking around, but we don't try to force sheep onto every site. That wouldn't be effective. We've had some bad sites.
One of the things that I've seen that's related to the stocking rate, the carrying capacity of that, and someone asked today about silvopastoral system, so that shade can have an effect on forages.
We grow more forage under the panels than in the open areas because we hold on to moisture and we have more consistent temperatures. And UGA has proven that, and so have some other universities now. But we were seeing it anecdotally early on, like, man, this is great pasture. And all of us, it's counterintuitive to what we assumed on day one.
Up until a couple of weeks ago, we'd gone through a 29-day drought, and on my ranch, everything was getting dry and browning out. And I rode through one of the arrays. I noticed the only thing green in the pastures is only what was under the panels. Everything that was out getting direct sunlight day to day had dried out at a much faster rate than everything that got partial shade and had a little bit cooler temperatures that didn't have that dew evaporating off quite as fast. So there's definitely benefits to the amount of forage that can be grown on that property with the impact of those panels.
One thing you had mentioned was having their babies out there in the pastures area underneath the panels. Has there been any issues with an influx of predators coming after the lambs or any of the other animals? And if so, how are you dealing with it?
My guard dogs don't let any of that happen. We have zero issues with predation right now, at least on our 3 ranches in Georgia. I feel fairly certain that I don't think we've lost a single lamb to a coyote since we've been on those properties. And the dogs do a great job of watching the air too, so we don't have birds or anything bothering the lambs either. Run Great Pyrenees, Anatolians, Agbosh, some that I think are just yellow labs that light on their resume, but there.
So have 1, 2 in the back, and 3 here.
First, I want to say Great Pyrenees are the best. And then I wanted to ask you, how do you manage parasite control?
I feel fairly confident in saying that we have the most parasite-resistant flock of Katahdin sheep in the country. Through all of the genetic work that's being done on our ranch in Elko, Georgia, or Perry, Georgia, we have the largest flock of Katahdins enrolled in the NSIP program, and they're able to make very good choices about what animals are bred to what animals and what genetics we select for. At a normal working, we may deworm 5% of our sheep based on their FAMACHA scores, and that's specifically speaking to the barber pole worm, of course. Jim's probably got more to say about that.
The first thing I'd say is that we built on the backs of the folks that started in SIP and Katahdins. The lady that mentored me in sheep since the beginning is from Hayhira, Georgia, just north of Valdosta. Roxanne Newton, I'll plug her at Hound River Farm. But she had supported my flock. I got foundation ewes that were in SIP sheep. I'm an engineer. I'll go back to that. So I came into ag with no experience. I'd read the books, so I had spreadsheets. I knew I knew what I wanted, but it works on the commercial side. So back home, I ran all in SIP rams, and I had a foundation flock of ewes. But my 500 ewes on the home farm, they were making lambs for Whole Foods. I was crossing them with terminal sire, and I was not in an SIP because I could go and buy a few rams every year from folks who had the resources to give each sheep more individual attention. The first year, we bought all the rams in an SIP with good fecal egg count EBVs at every sale. We got a bad reputation of, the solar boys showed up. And so after that first year, I went to the boss and said, hey, we got to do this ourselves because next year we're not going to be able to buy enough. We're turning out a little over 100 rams into his flock, and there's not enough NSIP producers focused on parasite resistance to supply it. To speak to the health challenges, I'm not an expert on it, but I recall as a young man the discussion of high voltage lines being near homes, in the 80s, and that never went anywhere, and people still live under them. As far as the non-news sources saying that there's all these harmful chemicals leaching, that these are forever waste products and everything, I would challenge that and say they are not leaching anything into the soil. We have third-party verified ecological outcome. 96% of the panel is recyclable. We use a company called Solar Cycle in Texas, and they recycle 96% of it into new modules. There's a lot of misinformation being spread, and so I just encourage people to get down to a fact-based, go to the National Energy Lab, someone like that, and try to find some published work on what you're looking for an answer on.
Fantastic.
Okay, so I'm going to answer the second question first. Silicon Ranch bought my sheep, and I got sold with the sheep. That's the story. I love my employers, the team I work with. But no, my sheep went there, and that was the foundation of the Silicon Ranch flock.
Oh, I wasn't in the sheep industry at all before I found the opportunity here.
They own all the sheep.
All of the sheep in Georgia.
Right. Yeah. So I want to talk to the other point because that's an important one and what everybody in here is interested about. Agrivoltaics is agribusiness. That's why I was cold calling Silicon Ranch. So I've been chasing solar for 5 years when I got a hold of them, just hoping there would be a project near me. I knew that the access to land was the limiting factor in my ability to grow the business and be comfortable in life. We lived the struggle. I know it's real. And, the revenue stream, I'll throw numbers out there, ranges for you guys. There's a couple of routes that are both very attractive. One is leasing land to a developer. And people hesitate on that. And the other side of that debate is, the developers are offering about $1,000 per acre per year right now on a 30-year contract with maybe a 3% inflation each year. Produce aside, which is very labor intensive, I can't run cattle, sheep, goats, row crops, anything, generate that kind of revenue, not lift the finger and hold the land in my family where, in 30 years, maybe somebody wants to come back to the farm and it's still an option. Whereas we all know if we sell today, it's been broken up 6 more times in that 30 years. So it gives an opportunity to defer a decision on a land sale, and that's what it affords people. It's particularly attractive. What I see is in the older generation who didn't have, kids went off into other careers and they don't want to give up the farm. They can't keep doing it, and they end up with a very comfortable retirement, reliable income every year, and the kids will get to make that decision when the time comes. And the alternative is to go out there and work every day like we enjoy doing. And those are also lucrative. So the average cost for in the Southeast, we're in a 5 mowing events per year region. And the owners of the power plants are paying between $300 and $400 an acre to get that mowed per year. If you are able to submit a bid for 20% less than that because you have the benefit of a lamb product to sell at the end of the year, I know a lot of people who are far more successful than me as vendors. I knew most of them from the sheep world before I came here, and now several have quit professional jobs, moved to another state, and they're a vendor for us now. And they live on ranch or adjacent to it, and they took their 100 ewe flock to a couple thousand also, and they have a ranch. And if it's a 2,000 acre ranch with $300 per acre, it's a $600,000 insurance policy. You still have to do a lot of work in order to receive that, but you know that you're going to get the check to pay your labor, to be able to walk into an equipment dealer, tool up on year one with that contract in your hand. And a lot of times the developer will front load the contract to, at least we do, to help folks enter the industry. And by year 3, folks typically have everything paid off.
And a few months ago, I went out to Minnesota to take a sheep for profit class that the Pipestone School puts on out there, and I talked to multiple first generation sheep farmers who were only able to stand up their business or in some cases expand an existing sheep enterprise by gaining that access to be able to graze solar lands. They're able to increase the amount of sheep they have as well as their revenue stream through taking over those contracts. And it's actually more cost effective for us to graze sheep under the panels ourselves than it is to pay to have the sites mowed. And then we get to sell off the ram crop at the end of the year.
So just one question following up on that. Most of the folks here that are working in small acreage with small herds are selling in a local market because there seem to be a high demand, but local. Is there a demand for the amount of animals you're producing? Are you able to sell them well?
Yes. So America imports roughly 80% of our lamb and mutton product from abroad. It's low-hanging fruit. If we can't produce it cheaper with a vegetation management stipend, then they can do it halfway around the world and ship it, then we need to sharpen our game. So there's tremendous opportunity. We always sell our lambs to a single customer, and they go in one day. It's a different customer each time, but there's always somebody to take the whole crop.
I guess I'm not clear where you get your salary from. Is it directly from the company?
It is. And so we're very unique in that regard. Bill and I, most people are vegetation management vendors for an asset owner, meaning that you learn to talk contract, you learn to interact with people who have no idea what you're doing, like in the day-to-day or the challenges that you're facing, and you present your messaging in a way that demonstrates that you are effectively providing the services required, and explaining how other challenges cause part of the site to get out of spec. It always is. We're always a little bit out of spec in parts of the site. You can't keep it all mowed with mowers. You can't keep it all grazed with sheep because it's too wet to get into, or Hurricane Helene came through and took 3 months to clean up the site, or whatever. And they call us. We look at Silicon Ranch as our customer for my department, and we budget our budgets the same. We are in competition with the outside vendors. We're expected to do a little bit better, and so yes, very much. usually be getting a check from you would be independent contractors, the tax term I'm looking for.
So this is a good segue for what I would like to talk for the next few minutes as we wrap up here. For people that are interested, I know some of the folks in the audience here are interested in that type of idea. What are the avenues that they can enter as contractors or as potentially on a model like what you guys offer?
When we meet a new, vendors reach out all the time. Potential future vendors reach out all the time. Some might have a couple thousand ewes. Some might have 100 ewes. If they have 20, I'll be realistic and say they might not have the management experience necessary to effectively run at scale. And we don't want somebody to fail. We kind of see ourselves as an incubator for other businesses. Our success is dependent on their success, and so we go through the business plans with everybody. And but you just call and keep calling because you won't get the right person. You can stop by the site and knock on the trailer door. Bring a hard hat. And you can just, that's what I've had friends that have called and asked advice, and I said, do it. Like, drive by twice a week till you get somebody that'll call you about vegetation management, because every developer out there, I don't know FPL well, and they have a monopoly on Florida, so we don't do anything here. But every independent developer out there would love to have a agricultural partner managing their land. Frankly, many use it as greenwashing. They'll do it on one project, but they're still, bare ground treating the other 90% of their fleet. But you have to learn about them, talk to other people. If they have stories of other land managers on their website, call them. Ask them how it's been to work with them, because I've heard some really positive stories. I've heard some negative ones. And it just comes down to those relationships. I really want to emphasize structuring yourself in conversation as a service provider. You're talking with people who are used to contracting in construction and with a very specific, subcontractor for a specific scope. And you need to be able to communicate clearly with them, understand what their expectations are, state what you need to be successful, like water. At least a well on site. We haul a lot of water around sites, but I've heard of people having to go to a hydrant down the road. That's insane, and have a meter on it. Ask the solar developer to drill a well. You've really got to do that. And then I also want to, anytime I have a chance to talk to an audience who's going to be at their community meetings, who's concerned about solar coming to their neighborhood, the best thing you can do if you would like an opportunity to manage the site is to go to your county commissioners and say, talk to them about your concerns. I understand, we need electricity reliability locally. We need a decentralized grid. I'm concerned about the land moving out of agriculture. I think that if we approve solar in this county, it should be required that the site is managed through grazing as at least a primary component of it. Some sites do require mechanical also, but you can go to the people who represent you and make them the voice for what you need to make solar happen for you and for your farm. It benefits the community in that grid reliability. And if you can find a way to make it fit with the values of the community, then it's a resource that, I hear all through the South, Mississippi, Arkansas, Louisiana, very poor communities, and small town mayors or county governors saying, this has been a boom for us. The solar property often becomes the largest taxpayer in the county. All the roads get repaved the year after construction's completed. The fire station finally gets the toilet fixed. Like these things where they're worried about an $800 repair, and then they're turning to, rejecting a project that's that's a true story I heard that they rejected a power plant that was going to be ag in a Georgia community recently, and in the same meeting, they didn't have the money to fix the toilet at the fire department. And it's like you're shooting yourself in the foot.
Thanks for being here. I came specifically. I've been talking with Dr. Wallau and some other folks here at UF. I came here specifically because I'm transitioning out of the military and want to get into regenerative agriculture. I came here because of ASGA, and I got the certification course next week, specifically looking to see if we can pair up the genetics of Florida native breed with the hot, humid climate down here in Florida, and with all the FP&L sites popping up, see if Florida can get on the ball that the same way North Carolina and a lot of the Northeast states on exactly what you gentlemen are doing. Question is, how hard is it to plan on solar grazing after the site was already developed, built, and going in there and trying to fix a lot of the issues like cab lines, fencing issues, the seed mix that was used, vice getting into the development phase where you can help design the site?
So once again, it depends. We have a ton of legacy sites in our fleet. The first project, Bill's on the first project that came out of construction since I started, which was the first time that like somebody thought about putting a gate like where the animals might move. So one of the legacy sites that we grazed, it was 2,500 acres. We had 2 arrays that were 100 feet apart, and it was a 4-mile walk for the sheep down public roads, with moving thousands of sheep, with dogs along roads with crops on both sides. It was a nightmare. They could have put 2 gates in, and we did the next year once we showed up with sheep ourselves. But little things like that are very helpful in the day-to-day in terms of adding efficiency. That being said, I go to any site and walk it because, as an example, one in Kentucky was a beautiful cattle pasture. The weather was perfect, the summer of construction, and my boss and I were walking, and I was like, man, this is the best forage I've ever seen on a solar site. And he looked at me and said, Jim, this is top 3 best farms I've seen, period. So sometimes you just get lucky and the land has exactly what you need. There was already a pond with a pumping station, and you can run above ground water to everything. And otherwise you haul water carts, but don't be scared of an existing site. Just go and take a look at what the soil and forage conditions are. And then cab, we don't worry about. That's what creates opportunity for us grazers, is they can save some money on the front end, still manage it for the price of burying it, and we have access to land.
Fantastic. That's a lot of very good information. So if we can summarize that, I think it's a very good opportunity. We're not going away from solar. Our people, we have 21 million people in Florida. We need the energy. It is expanding. And I think they're, instead of seeing as a threat, the agricultural community can see as an opportunity for us to work together with solar. I was very skeptical in the beginning. I did not like seeing all that cropland turning into solar, but it's a fact. It is happening. So this is an opportunity for us to operate.
I'd like to share a couple of thoughts, if you may.
Yes, please go ahead.
Bill mentioned I should flag cattle tracker. So this is our pilot project. It's a 24-acre site. Don't roll your eyes. We need to prove the concept, but this is probably going to scale. It's just the next evolution in solar. It's not significantly more expensive to construct. We got creative in how we manipulate the panels with the grazing movement, and so there's software and coordination. They're only 6 inches higher than what we already build. So there's this is going to continue to evolve. There's going to be more opportunity for production. So don't look at it and say, well, I'm a goat guy. I'm not interested. All of this is evolving. It's a new industry. Another thing I want to share is something that Dr. Weaver tells all of his students. He wanted to go into sheep production, so did I. We both took very different paths because we didn't have land. And he tells his students that when he was in school, in undergrad, they told him that if you want to earn a professional living in livestock production, you can go to confinement poultry, confinement swine, or home, if you have a farm to go back to. Those were the three options, or you're, fix and fence. Yes. Now he tells his students you can do poultry, swine, or sheep under agrivoltaics. The opportunity is there. It's lucrative. That's going to come more into balance as the industry evolves, is my guess. But the cost of mowing isn't going to go down, and that's always going to be the alternative. So we've got a buoy, holding our prices steady.
Fantastic. I really appreciate you coming sharing with us, and I appreciate all of you here today with us in the 4th Small Ruminant Short Course. It's always a pleasure to be here with you. Thank you all for being here. Thank you guys for sharing your expertise.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you.
This podcast was brought to you by the University of Florida Forage Team with technical support from the University of Florida College of Agriculture and Life Sciences, Faculty Instructional Resource and Support Team. This episode was produced by Marcelo Wallau, Jim Malooley, and Ashley Kanabrowski. We hope you have enjoyed this podcast. If you have any comments or thoughts to share with us, please reach out to us through our email, forages@ifas.ufl.edu, and find us on our social media, uf.forages on Instagram, UF Forage Team on Facebook, or UF IFAS Forages on YouTube. We hope to see you in our next episode.